Welcome back to Jolene's Books and Writers Talk podcast. Today, we're thrilled to welcome fantasy author Benjamin Coward, whose gripping debut, The Dragon's Tooth, is turning heads in the genre. We first met Benjamin at the Sunshine State Book Festival on February 1st in Gainesville, Florida, and we're excited to catch up with him again before his upcoming appearance at the Literary Indulgence Festival on June 28th in Jacksonville. Benjamin brings a fresh voice to fantasy, blending dark adventure with rich world building and unforgettable characters. His passion for storytelling shines through in The Dragon's Tooth, and today we'll talk with him about writing epic fantasy, building immersive worlds, and the journey from idea to published book. So grab your coffee, pull up a chair, and join us as we dive into the mind behind the magic with Benjamin Coward.
My name is Benjamin Coward. I live in North Central Florida. I grew up actually in St. Louis, and I've always enjoyed reading fantasy. My book is The Dragon's Tooth, and I came up with The Dragon's Tooth because a lot of books have to do with dragon riders and how this bond forms between humans and dragons. But not a lot goes into how that came to be. So I wanted to write my own series. There's this pairing of dragons and riders, and be able to create a world instead of having the world already there and just being like, oh yeah, this kind of happened. We don't know exactly how, or be authentic with it, be able to show exactly what happened. Like give the characters and all of that their own credit. And a little bit about me. My degree is in environmental science.
Oh, nice.
So it's a little weird of a message that I'm doing, if you can follow me. In fantasy, you have magic, and magic is in the world. And how I view magic in my own way is that magic is much like a non-renewable resource. It's all around us, but when it's overused, then bad things happen. The world's out of sync. And so I eventually want to relay those types of feelings behind magic, that you can't have magic, you can't have the wonder of the world if you don't have this. My best way to look at it is being in North Central Florida, we have Payne's Prairie.
Oh, yes.
When was
Lovely.
the first time you went out there and you went up to one of the towers and you looked over all of the flowers and saw the horses, and you were and just for miles, it was just green. And you just take a deep breath, and for a minute, you're just in a completely different world. It's like, how can you have this environment when you also have this? So I want that magic to be the representation of nature. Because that's very much my view on magic, that it's nature. Uh,
Cool. Are you working on another book yet?
yes, I am hoping to make The Dragon's Tooth a series.
Cool.
The Dragon's Tooth is, of course, the weapon of my main character. I made actually the race, which I called the Kusarku, but it's basically a race that is much like a minotaur, but humanized.
Okay.
So less rough and more of human traits, but still has horns and hooves. And so in this world, the Kusark are the minority. And In their history, they had this weapon called the Dragon's Tooth. What we find out in the book is that it gives the wielder a power, and only the king of the Kusark could use it. There were political pressures from humans and elves, and basically everybody was like, we don't really want you to have that weapon. The weapon was lost. Our main character's father found a piece of that weapon. Our main character is now growing up. His father has died. We don't know details on that. Although all that we really know is that our main character has this weapon and has to figure out how to use it, has to bring his own people back during a time of strife where there's been attacks on many of the different races, and some of the races are blaming the Kusark for these attacks. So our character has to stand up in this and be like, whoa, it's not me. Don't blame us for anything. We're here to help. And at the same time, step up and be an adult, be a king in his own way that he never thought he was going to be.
Okay. All right, we're delving deep into the characters. Let's talk about, most fantasy authors that I know of have what they call a Bible for their world, so they can keep track of language, words, usage, government, that sort of stuff. Have you created one yourself? And if so, do you keep it on like a Word document or a spreadsheet or?
Yes, I do have my own on a
Okay.
Word document that I follow for myself. I don't have a map made yet, but just remembering where things are sometimes and being like, okay, they're going west. What's west?
See, that's very
Um,
important. You need to know all that stuff.
oh yeah, especially with world building. One of the things that I really wanted in my book is you have the main character story going on, but because you're seeing this one story, that doesn't mean that other things aren't going on in the background. And maybe the main character knows about these things, but he doesn't have to be centrally there for events to take place. That way, he can be doing his own thing and then come in naturally into it.
Okay. Who is your favorite fantasy author?
My favorite fantasy author. I grew up reading Aragon,
Okay.
which is Christopher Paolini. I read quite a few of his series. I don't know if I read the Fractal verse that he came out with, but I read the full series of his Dragon books of Allegasia. That was very important to me growing up as a kid, loving dragons and magic and the adventure.
Did you ever read Anne McCaffrey?
I don't think so.
Dragon Riders of Pern.
Yes, I did read two of the Dragon Riders of Pern. It gets a bit in depth for me when they go off world and stuff, and it goes in a different direction out of my comfort zone. They're very good books.
Yes, they are spread out and they go through centuries of being. And I put her on a spreadsheet myself and the time period for each of the books. So I enjoy reading her stories, and I've been reading them since I was young. And so I'm quite a bit older than you are, but I did enjoy all of her stories. There's also an author called Joel Rosenberg. Well, there's actually two Joel Rosenbergs. One, he did a series of books where these college players fall into the world of D and they become their
Oh yeah.
characters. The other Joel does suspense thrillers and spies and stuff. So two different people. I read his and I enjoyed his, and I had to read it, the whole series, all that fun stuff. But you get enamored of the world and the way they create them, and you wonder, how do you come up with your worlds? Does it just something you mix up? Do you play D&D?
So for me, I do love going into my own imagination. I do play D&D myself, and that for me that was a blessing to be able to stretch my imagination on being somebody other than myself, portraying a role. There are books though that I love, the Dragonlance series, which is Dungeons and Dragons based. For me, I love the escapism of that fantasy can provide. You, for a second, you're taken by the hand by these characters and brought into a different world. So a lot of my process in writing is very fluid. I have a general outline of where I go with things, but I like my characters to go naturally. I don't want my character to be exactly pinpoint driven. Oh, he has to do this. He has to do this. So in my writing, there is a good bit of me where I'm just writing, which if you read any Stephen King or anything like that, his best advice is just go down and write it and then go
Yeah.
back and do your edits.
You can't edit a blank page, I think is what they say.
Exactly.
So you're more of a plotter.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I like to go by the seat of my pants. I do find, though, when I'm starting a mystery series, I'm a nonfiction author since 2014, but when I delved into the mystery, I wanted to do steampunk, but first I had to do historical fiction romance to get started in the genre kind of thing, to dip my toe in, as it were. Usually helps me to have an outline from beginning to end. Not so much what happens in between, but in order to get me over my soggy middle kind of thing and get to the end, I needed to know where at least some of the steps so I can fall back on them. And that helped me get through the books.
I like to look at my outline almost like a goal.
Okay.
There are set goals that have to be hit. Okay, the characters are going to start here. This is going to happen. The destination is here. What happens in this gap? There does have to be some type of character building and some events that take place in this gap, but that is more fluid to me.
So what do you like, the different tropes of fantasy? I think most fantasy novels are the quest.
Yes.
Okay.
That is definitely a trope of fantasy. When I started off the book and you're starting from a destination, I could almost see myself in D&D walking into the bar or pub and going, okay, where are the adventurers around that I'm going to party up with?
Cool. Graphic artist or?
I don't do any drawing myself. I have actually poor handwriting. And as a kid, I actually had poor hand-eye coordination. So I have bad grip on pencils and stuff, which is why I write mostly electronically.
All right. So do you use text-to-speech software? Does that help?
I have run into the issue where I talk too fast.
Yes.
And then it'll try to play catch up. And it's, it froze. Oh, it didn't get all that. And
What did I say? What did I say?
And I'll be a paragraph on before I notice.
Yes, I've noticed that too. I help authors that do not have their backstories on computer. So you have to do the text to speech. You read. It's faster to read the book into Word than it is to try to sit there with it and type.
And
you have to go back and you put in the quotes for all the conversations and make sure, because when you say next line or enter or whatever, it doesn't necessarily hear that. And Does it go to the
Yeah.
next line?
Or the times where you're like, period, and it writes out period.
Sometimes it puts a period in and sometimes it don't.
And yeah.
Now, I do ask authors, especially fantasy authors, what do you think about the up and coming AI programs? Are they a help, a hindrance, or a combination of both?
Personally, I don't believe that they are a hindrance. I view most things as a reader. If you're going to go to a AI book, you're going to understand it's written by AI. There's not a personal invested interest in what is being written to some extent. However, when you have a person that's writing it, like me or somebody else, there is a vested interest in the characters. Even George R. R. Martin killing off his characters right and left, there is still something that he's put into each character that is personal, and there's feeling put behind that. Not to say that AI can't do that, but there's a conversation going on between the writer and the reader of what matters to them and what they're trying to say to you. And I don't see AI as fulfilling that gap, especially in this day and age where it has to say if you're using AI, if this book was AI written. And I'm sure there are people that are like, hey, I'm out of things to read. I'll read an AI book and see what I think. And that's fine. But like for me, I would always prefer to see through the eyes of the writer. There's a writer called Michael R. Miller, and he wrote the Ascendance series. I think it's the Ascendance series. It's the Song of Chaos. And the first book is Ascendant, but it's a Dragon Rider book. And he wrote his whole magical way of using magic by breathing techniques because he has cerebral palsy.
Ah,
He has a disease. So he wrote the book through his own struggle. And that makes it amazing. That there is a conversation going on between you and the author then that makes it special.
what about AI generated art? Have
Art,
you tried doing that?
it depends on how it's being used. I don't agree with, say, you say dragon and it puts up a dragon. There is a difference, though, in making a program where you're going for something. You're making something based on your description of how you create it. There is still some art going into that because you have a picture in your head. You are taking a snapshot. A photographer, you're a person is visibly taking the picture because they see it as art. They see this picture, they see the art, and then that's what they go. Just saying, oh, dragon, and it prints something out. That is different.
Yeah, you have to be specific because there's all
Oh, yeah.
kinds of dragons in the world. Chinese dragons, D&D dragons,
Chinese, Welsh dragons, and German.
or
Oh, reading a book about dragons, and then all of a sudden they talk about the ears, and I'm like, wait, dragons have ears? And so
in their
it
world they
changes
do.
it changes the picture though.
Yeah, true.
But there's definitely competition in the world of art and music. For many people, there's this hunger to consume new art, to consume new media. So I can see where there's a drive to have AI making fast, easy things. I will always prefer the long way. I prefer the struggle and the creation process of it.
Or do you have any graphic artists or illustrators that help you with fan art?
Fan art, I have not gotten into yet. An artist of my own. It was Ruth, and she is the person that did the cover. Ruth, horribly butchering her name, Bethia, Bethea.
Okay.
And she does a lot of acrylic art, actually. And I
Okay.
saw, it's really weird. I saw a picture of hers of an owl. But I was like, the shading and the black and whites I was like, I don't want something over the top. I want something simple in my cover. And so that's what I went with.
Okay. So for your next book, would you use her again or maybe try somebody else?
I think I'd like to use some of her art again. I am actually going to be using that her art for the bookmarks that I'm currently trying to make, which is an ongoing thing. But I do think I'll use her again because more than anything, she was very easy to communicate with.
Yeah.
And okay, just describing the weapon, the dragon's tooth. The dragon's tooth, in my eyes, was basically a Roman gladius, but instead of being the single weapon, it was broken in two. So you had the main piece and the hilt attached, but then the hilt attached to the hilt was a chain that attaches to the wrist. That way the weapon can be thrown, and that way it was a range weapon as well. Um, there's going to be a whole thing with it, and but it was very. I talked to some authors, and it was always like difficult to see my vision, and she really captured my own vision of what I was going for.
That's hard to find. Somebody who
Yes,
gets you.
yes, which is, I was very happy.
It also helps with your branding if you try to stick with the same artist because they'll use the same coloring and the same dimensions and that sort of stuff.
You get into big books, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and they describe so many characters. And then art will come out of them because you're like, what does that actually look like? And you go and look at different art drawings of them, and you're like, that's not what they look like. Or like Gandalf, it has a longer beard than that. But I do think that I will continue to use her, but I'm more than open to seeing fan art and stuff like that of how they think I'm describing these characters. Because to a certain extent, when you're writing a book, you give some generic facts. Okay, this person is average height. So we're saying 5'10" to 5'9" for a male, maybe 5'8". Athletic build. Okay, what does that in the reader's brain look like? Does it look the same as mine? What I'm thinking in my brain.
Yeah, because a swimmer's body is definitely different from a footballer's body.
Exactly.
They're
But
both
what is,
athletic.
yeah, uh, that is what I like a little bit about being generic with some of the traits of the character.
Mhm.
That way, everybody can paint their own picture.
Yeah, that's been the advice I got from my mentor. She said, you want to give them enough detail to give them a rough idea, but don't get so detailed that their imagination can't take flight.
One of my details was like, besides him being my main character being a Kusark and having smaller horns than normal, he has very small horns, like that big, that are black. I wanted him to have a scar right here on his chin. And I wanted it to be like a childhood injury where he was running along the creek like kids do and slipped and fell and hit his chin on a rock. And that was my image of him, an adventurous person that liked to be out in the woods running, and this image of freedom in the mountain wilderness.
How did you come up with your book? What was the first inspiration for your book?
The first inspiration, I was actually trying to come up with a D&D program.
Ah,
I was trying to be a DM. And so I was coming up with my own story. And at the time, there were a lot of racial things going on in the world. When I look at people, I see people. So I wanted a book to give my own feelings on racial and gender stereotyping. Like, I have girls in my book, and some of the girls are warriors. I don't believe that the descriptions of a person are based anything on what they look like or how they act. And I wanted to be able to say that. So in the case of my book, where the Kusark are being stereotyped against because, hey, they have horns. Normally, when you think of a thing with horns, you think of a devil or a demon or something evil. And I was like, I don't want that. I want to use that stereotype. The Greek myths, what were they? They were the monster in the labyrinth. Was that really a monster, or was that something that was created by the king in Greek myths? So I wanted to break stereotyping and be able to have my character stand up and be like, no, that's not us. We're here to help you. Whatever you need from us, we're here, but leave our people alone. And I didn't want the humans to be the ones that were doing the stereotyping, actually. It was the elves that are doing stereotyping in the book. Because in a lot of the books, we hold elves to a higher standard. We use the word high elf to describe elves a lot of the time. And while that might be a race based on Tolkien or whatever, then you have the dwelling elves and the house elves and all of that. But anyways, I wanted them to be looking down on somebody, them looking down as they do in Tolkien on the dwarves, as, oh, they're different. Therefore, we should be above them. I wanted people to be like, oh, these elves are not perfect, so how can we be perfect?
what advice would you give somebody just starting out in the writer's game? What two things that you found the most helpful over the years?
Honestly, for me, remember to have fun with this. If I was doing this just for a job, I would not enjoy it. Do it because you love it, because you want to have a message. Don't do it because, oh, I have to get it done. Oh, it has to be this. Don't put pressure on yourself to
Okay.
make it something that it's not. Make it yours. in your image. Don't add pressure to your life. Make this your own escape, a story that you were reading, and you're just like, whoa, let- go places with it and have fun. Because if you're not having fun with it, how can the reader have fun with
Very sage advice. And how about number two?
it? Number two, I would say number two would be when you're done writing it all out, go back, read your own book, read what you wrote down. Do you like it? Does it sound the same as how you were writing it out? Or did the flow of that change somehow when you were writing it? Make sure you are putting out what you want to be said, not, oh, I was writing this out and I thought I was saying it this way, but it turned out this way. When you reread it,
Mhm.
and that you're giving the message that you want.
I like to use words read aloud function, but I
Yeah.
change the voice between men and women in different accents to have the book read back to me, the passages, because your brain processes it different when it's just listening.
I've talked to people that use the Speechify app.
I already pay for word. And
Oh,
the good thing is, so long as you're on the internet, you can change the voice to 100 different ones.
okay.
Because if they grade on you, like some of the male AIs do, I change it to the female. Or if I want to listen to British or Australian accents reading my story, I try
Right.
that. It just helps me. Okay, now for the last question I usually ask authors, if you had the chance to have three guests at different times at your dinner table, no matter who they are or when they were alive or dead or whatever, who would they be and why would you like to have them there?
Okay. So, one, of course, I think would be Tolkien. I'd
Yes.
love a second to get in his head because so much of our culture now of fantasy is based on what he made. His description of dwarves and elves, uh, and how he created the world. Absolutely. I believe my other one, it a little bit weird, but I'd love to hear from Tepesh.
Okay, you'll have to explain that one.
He, of course, the inspiration for Dracula. Um,
Oh, okay.
so he, and such an interesting person that today we view him as Dracula, a demon, a horrible person. Vlad, at the time in the Roman church, he was the defender of Christianity against the Turks. And he used basically his own way of war into getting this huge Turkish army to turn around. The King of Hungary and all of that applauded Vlad's efforts. I'd love to hear what type of person he actually was. Because it's very hard this day and age to hear secondhand who was he as a person?
Yeah.
What did he think about all of this? What was he going for when he did the acts that he did? I think third, it would be somewhat sentimental, and that would be my great grandmother.
Oh,
We actually have the same birthday. She died in 2008. Every birthday she'd be like, "Oh, This will be our last birthday together. I would love to hear, not pat myself on the back. I always hold myself to a standard that I want to make her proud because she thought I could do something with my life. One Christmas, oh, what do you want to be, Ben? Oh, I'm thinking about being a firefighter, or I'm thinking about being this. And she would be like, I think you're holding yourself back. I think you're setting yourself on a bar that's too low. And that's not to say anything about firefighters or anybody like that. This was my grandmother's own opinion. And she lived in a small house in the country. And I would love, though, to hear her opinion of where I am and the family that I've created. I have a small daughter. She's 1.5. I'd love for a minute for her to see all of that.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, Mr. Benjamin, thank you so much for participating. Well, that was an interesting interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, we hope you will like, subscribe, comment, and share our post with your social media and your friends and family. If you're an author or anyone else in the book business and would like to be part of our podcast, we would love to have you. Check out the website, southerndragonpublishing.com, and there's a tab for the podcast. Check it out. We'll see you next time.